I woke up with this quiet flutter in my chest, the kind that feels like both nerves and joy twisted together. The sunlight poured through the curtains like it had been choreographed just for me. Everything smelled like lavender and promise. My wedding was 2 days away, and for once, everything felt easy. The dress was hanging by the window, the caterers were confirmed, and my heart was bursting with love for the man I was about to marry. Ethan, the one who called me his home. The one I thought was mine. I spent the morning double-checking guest baskets and laughing with my cousins, sipping coffee that had gone cold while I got caught in daydreams. Every corner of the house buzzed with people, familiar voices, suitcases rolling in, my mom whispering about centerpieces. And me? I floated, touched by everyone's joy. I felt like a bride, not just in the romantic way, but in that grounded, deeply happy way. I had chosen Ethan, and he had chosen me. Or at least, I thought he had. When Talia walked in, I could tell something was wrong before she even said a word. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and she held out her phone like it was made of glass. "You need to see this," she whispered. My stomach dropped before I even unlocked the screen. The messages were all there. His name, her replies. The dates, recent. The tone, unmistakable, flirty, intimate. One of them was from this morning. My fingers went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just looked at Talia and said as calmly as I could, "We don't cancel the wedding. We change the ending." Talia stared at me like she expected me to shatter right there. And maybe I should have. But something in me settled instead, like a lake freezing over in an instant. I handed her back the phone and smiled. A small, deliberate smile, the kind you wear when you're deciding to stay 3 steps ahead. "No one else sees this," I told her. "Not yet." She hesitated like she wanted to argue, but then she nodded. That's what best friends do. They trust your silence, even when it's louder than words. I went back into the room with the others and acted like nothing had happened. Someone handed me a glass of Prosecco. I laughed at a joke I barely heard. I held my dress up to the light and told my mom how perfect it looked. Inside, though, my brain was stitching together every lie I must have missed, every late meeting, every glance at his phone. Every moment I had given him the benefit of the doubt, like a fool in love, blinded by good intentions. But now I could see, and I wasn't going to scream. I was going to wait, watch, and choose my moment. That night, while everyone else was sharing stories and toasting to forever, I sat in bed with a pen in my hand. The wedding vows I'd written weeks ago were in the drawer, untouched. Instead, I started a new page. I wrote slowly, deliberately. The beginning was soft, sweet even. The kind of words everyone would expect. But halfway through, my tone shifted. I didn't erase it. I leaned in. Because this wasn't a love story anymore. It was a reveal, a decision, a final scene no one would see coming. I kept the new vows folded inside my journal, next to a pressed flower Ethan once gave me. Funny how something that used to feel tender now felt hollow. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed him, but because I was mourning something else. The version of myself that believed him without question, that defended him, that once looked at her future and saw only him. That girl was gone. And the woman left behind? She wasn't bitter. She was awake. And awake women don't collapse. They calculate. The next morning, I greeted the wedding planner with a warm smile. I took photos with my nieces. I posed with Ethan when he wrapped his arm around my waist like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek and called me his bride, and I let him. Let him look proud, relaxed, unbothered. He still had no idea. I watched him check his phone between conversations. I knew exactly who he was texting, and I didn't flinch. Because when you've been handed the truth, there's a quiet kind of power in deciding how and when you'll use it. Later that evening, my mom pulled me aside. She touched my cheek and said, "Something's different about you, baby." I smiled and kissed her hand. "You'll see," I whispered, and I meant it. Because tomorrow I would walk down the aisle. Everyone would be watching. Everyone would be expecting a love story. But what they'd get was something much more honest. I woke up before the sun, my heart oddly calm. Not excited, not anxious, just steady. The kind of stillness that comes when you've already made your decision. I looked in the mirror and told myself to smile. And I did. I smiled so well that even I started to believe it. The house was buzzing. Stylists unpacking bags, my aunt steaming dresses, music playing low from someone's phone. I moved through it all like I was floating. "She's glowing," someone whispered. If only they knew what kind of fire was really burning underneath. When I stepped into rehearsal, I played my part like a pro, held Ethan's hand when they told us to, practiced turning and smiling at the crowd. I even laughed when he made some joke to his groomsmen about not tripping over his own feet. He was so relaxed, so completely unaware. He didn't see the way my fingers curled just slightly tighter into my palm each time he glanced down at his phone. Still hiding her, still choosing her. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. Let him enjoy this day. The last one where he thinks he has it all. By mid-afternoon, we were sitting at the long dining table in the garden for the final family dinner before the big day. Champagne was flowing. Toasts were made. I watched his mother dote on him and call me the luckiest girl alive. I smiled back and thanked her. But my mind wasn't at the table. It was with the folded note in my purse, my vows. Not the ones I wrote months ago, the ones I finished just last night. I'd rehearsed every line in my head like a prayer. But tomorrow, I wouldn't need to pretend anymore. Later that night, I found myself sitting alone on the porch while everyone else danced inside. The air was warm, soft with jasmine and distant laughter. I could hear Ethan's voice through the open window, telling some story, probably one he'd told 100 times. I wondered if she'd heard it too. I wondered if he told her he loved her the way he used to tell me. I stared at the stars and felt nothing. No ache, no pull, just a still kind of knowing. This wasn't going to be a wedding. It was going to be a reveal. I kept thinking about the moment it would happen. Would my voice shake? Would he catch on before I said the words? I didn't think so. He was too comfortable, too sure of me. That was always the problem. He thought I'd never leave, that I loved him too much to burn the bridge, and he was half right. I did love him. But I had learned something in the last 48 hours. Love without truth is just a leash. And I wasn't leashed anymore. I wasn't walking into that church to beg. I was walking in to break the spell. My mother came out to check on me. She sat beside me, wrapped her shawl tighter, and looked at me for a long time. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked gently. And I lied. Not because I didn't trust her, but because this had to be mine. My timing, my words, my fire. "I'm just tired," I told her, and leaned my head on her shoulder. She kissed my hair like she did when I was little. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. Just ready. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the occasional clink of glasses downstairs, the fading sounds of celebration. I kept picturing his face, the way he'd smile tomorrow when he saw me in white. How proud he'd look, how sure. And I let the image sit there. I studied it like you study something before you let it go for good. I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was focused, clear. Every piece of me knew what had to be done, and how to do it. In the quiet, I pulled out the vow card one last time. The paper felt heavier now, like it was carrying more than just words. It held my truth, my freedom. I whispered the lines to myself in the dark, letting each syllable settle into my bones. I wanted to remember how they felt in my mouth before I released them into the world. I didn't want to sound bitter. That wasn't the point. I wanted to sound awake, like a woman who had seen the fire and chose not to be consumed by it, only illuminated. Just before dawn, I watched the sky begin to shift, a pale blue creeping into the dark like a secret, and I knew this would be the last morning Ethan ever assumed I'd say I do. Everyone else thought they were coming to see a love story, but love was never supposed to look like betrayal in a tuxedo. So I pressed my palms together, took a breath, and stood. Because the next time I'd see him, I'd be walking toward him, and I'd be carrying the truth in my hands like a gift he never saw coming. I don't remember much about getting ready. It's like my body went on autopilot while my mind drifted far above everything. People fluttered around me, stylists, bridesmaids, my mother wiping tears of joy. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed. I sat there, letting them curl my hair, button my dress, paint on the look of a woman about to live her dream. And in a way, I was. Just not the dream they thought. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I looked stunning, strong. Like a woman stepping into her power, not her husband's life. The music started. The guests stood. My father offered his arm and whispered, "You ready, baby?" And I nodded, not because I was walking toward Ethan, but because I was walking toward the truth. Each step down that aisle felt like a countdown, not to a beginning, but to a release. I could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes, all smiling, all hopeful. I smiled back. Because no one knew what was coming. Not even Ethan, who stood at the altar looking at me like I was his entire world. It almost made me pity him. Almost. When I reached the altar, he took my hands, warm, steady, still believing in the story he'd built. The officiant welcomed everyone, made a few light jokes. People laughed. Ethan squeezed my hand. The moment was picture perfect, but picture perfect is fragile. And today, it was going to crack wide open. The officiant turned to me and said, "Camille, your vows?" I took a breath. Time slowed. I looked Ethan right in the eyes. He smiled. I didn't. And then I said it. One word. Clear. Unshaken. No. At first, there was silence, pure, suspended silence. I could hear someone gasp behind me. A murmur rippled through the rows like a slow-moving wave, crashing into disbelief. Ethan blinked, unsure if he'd heard me right. He gave this awkward laugh, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. I didn't flinch. I didn't waver. I just looked at him, really looked at him for who he was. And then I turned to the guests, my voice calm, my spine tall. I found out 2 days ago that Ethan has been unfaithful. You could feel the shift in the air, sharp and immediate. Eyes widened. Hands flew to mouths. A woman in the second row whispered, "Oh my God." But I wasn't done. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone," I said. "I came here because I thought you all deserved the truth. I won't pretend in front of my family, my friends, or God. I won't bless a lie just to protect someone else's image." I looked at his mother, her hand frozen in mid-clap, and then at my own mother, who simply nodded once, with tears in her eyes. Ethan started to speak, his face red, confused, sputtering with half-formed excuses. But I didn't let him steal the moment. Not this one. I turned back to the aisle, adjusted the hem of my dress, and walked. Not rushed, not in shame, but in dignity. Every step echoed louder than the vows I never spoke. People parted as I passed. Some cried, Some followed me with their eyes like I was a fire moving through a field. And in that moment, I wasn't the bride. I was the woman who chose herself, in front of everyone. As I reached the doors, I heard someone say my name. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Let them sit with their shock. Let them sit with him. My heels clicked against the marble floor like a heartbeat, steady, unfaltering. And with every step, I felt something peeling off of me. The guilt, the shame, the pressure to forgive quietly. It all slid to the floor behind me like the train of a dress I never meant to wear. I pushed open the doors and stepped outside, where the air was crisp and real in mine. I didn't cry. Not then. Not later. My hands were steady as I took out my phone and texted Talia one word. Done. I could almost feel her exhale from wherever she was sitting. She had offered to stand beside me today, ready to help if I needed her. But I told her this had to be mine. All mine. And it was. Not just the moment, but the silence that followed. The kind of silence that fills you up, not empties you out. I looked up at the sky and smiled. I hadn't ruined a wedding. I had saved a life, my own. And as I stood on those steps, dress still clinging to my body, heart still pounding in my chest, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't broken. I wasn't humiliated. I was free. I hadn't said I do to a man who betrayed me. I had said no. To lies, to silence, to shrinking myself for someone else's comfort. And while everyone behind those doors tried to make sense of what had just happened, I took my first real breath. The kind that tells you, something new is finally beginning. By the time I got home, my phone was already buzzing like it had caught fire. Text after text, missed calls, voicemails I had no intention of opening. My cousin sent me a video. Someone had recorded it. My moment. That single word. That truth, spoken at the altar. I watched it, not because I needed to relive it, but because I wanted to see myself from the outside. And there she was, calm, centered, defiant in satin and lace. I barely recognized her. And yet, I knew she'd been waiting to show up for years. Support came pouring in like a flood. Old friends, acquaintances, women I barely knew who found the clip online. You're a hero, some wrote. You saved me without knowing it. One woman said, you walked out so I could find the courage to do the same. I didn't expect that. I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. But somehow, my truth had echoed. It had hit something raw and universal. And that mattered more than any wedding ever could. I wasn't just a woman who said no. I was now a symbol of one who meant it. And Ethan? Of course he called. Over. And over. The messages started with confusion, shifted into apologies, then full-blown desperation. It didn't mean anything, he said in one. We were stressed. I made a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. A decision, made over and over, in private, thinking I'd never know. Thinking he'd never have to pay for it. What he didn't realize was, I did find out. And I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't burn his clothes or scream in public. I just walked away, while everyone was watching. The next morning, I woke up to over 3,000 notifications. My name was trending. Someone had uploaded the video with the title, She Said No and Meant It. 3 million views. Comments pouring in from all over the world. Women, men, even therapists weighing in. Bravery in its rawest form. A masterclass in self-respect. I sat on my couch, hair still tangled, coffee untouched, just staring. I never asked for this kind of spotlight. But I wasn't afraid of it either. I had spoken the truth, and now it was speaking back. Later that day, the woman, posted a photo. Her, in bed, Ethan's shirt unmistakably draped over her shoulder. The caption? No more secrets. And honestly, I felt nothing. No sting, no rage, just confirmation. Confirmation that I had been right to trust my gut. Right to listen to the quiet voice inside me that had screamed when I saw those screenshots. She thought she was exposing something, but all she did was underline everything I'd already walked away from. I didn't need revenge. I had peace. People kept asking if I regretted how I did it. Why not just cancel the wedding quietly? Why not handle it behind closed doors? But that's the thing. The betrayal wasn't quiet. It was loud in my body. Loud in my mind. It robbed me of sleep, of safety, of certainty. So why should the truth be whispered? Why should his shame be protected when my trust wasn't? I didn't need to shame him. I just needed to stop protecting the version of him that never existed. And that was the real freedom. The funny thing is, people kept calling me brave, like I jumped into fire. But I didn't feel brave. I felt honest. Like I'd finally said what I should have said long ago, just louder. I wasn't trying to start a movement or go viral. I was trying to protect my future. And now, without even meaning to, I had become the woman I used to wish I could be. The one who didn't stay silent just to keep the peace. The one who knew that peace built on lies isn't peace at all. It's a prison with fancy table settings. The offers started rolling in. Interview requests, podcast invites, even a few agents reaching out. I ignored most of them at first. It felt strange to turn my heartbreak into headlines. But then I got a message from a woman who said, "You didn't just walk away from a man, you walked toward yourself." And I needed to see that. That one stuck with me. I saved it, read it twice, and I started to think, maybe this wasn't just about what I lost. Maybe it was about what I was finally ready to build. So I opened a blank document on my laptop. No title. Just a blinking cursor and a rush of thoughts. I didn't know if it'd be a post, a blog, a book. All I knew was I had more to say. Not about Ethan, but about the part of me that kept shrinking to make him look bigger. The part that mistook loyalty for silence. The part that needed to know. You can start over at the altar and still end up whole. And as I typed that first sentence, I realized I wasn't telling a story of heartbreak. I was telling the truth. Finally, without apology. Months passed, but it felt like I'd lived an entirely new life. I traveled, not to run, but to breathe. Italy, Morocco, Costa Rica. I went places I'd once saved for a honeymoon. Turns out sunsets taste sweeter when you're not waiting for someone else to witness them. I took myself to dinner. I learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. There's a quiet magic in that, discovering that your own company can feel like freedom instead of a punishment. That joy, real joy, isn't something you borrow. It's something you grow. The podcast started as a simple idea. Just me, a microphone, and stories I wished someone had told me when I was younger. I called it The Other Vow, the one you make to yourself. I talked about betrayal, boundaries, rebuilding. It wasn't polished, and I didn't try to be perfect. That's what made it work. Women from everywhere started writing in. Some crying, some angry, some just grateful. We built a small world out of honesty. No filters, no fairy tales, just truth. Raw, messy, beautiful truth. Then came the book deal. A real one. I remember sitting across from the publisher in New York, still half expecting them to say it was a mistake. But it wasn't. They wanted to call it The Vow I Kept to Myself. And I said yes. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I knew what it meant. That my voice, once quieted by love, now stood on its own. That the girl who once whispered "it's okay" through gritted teeth had finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. I started sleeping better, deeper. No dreams of weddings or what-ifs. Just peace. Some mornings I'd wake up, make coffee, and reread old journal entries, the ones I wrote when I still believed love meant endurance. I hardly recognized that version of me. She was so desperate to be chosen, so scared to be alone. I didn't judge her. I just knew I'd never be her again. Healing isn't a straight line. I had my nights of tears, my waves of doubt. But I always returned to myself, and that was the difference. One afternoon, I was sitting outside my favorite cafe, laptop open, messy bun, no makeup, when I saw him. Ethan, alone, disheveled in that way that looks like someone's been living on regret. He hesitated when he saw me, then walked over, like a man trying to reclaim something he barely understood. I didn't flinch. He said my name like it still belonged to him, sat down without asking. "You ruined my life," he said, voice low, bitter. I looked at him, really looked, and all I felt was pity. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled, soft but certain. "No," I said. "You ruined mine first. I just returned the favor. With truth." He didn't respond, just stared at me, maybe waiting for me to take it back. But I didn't. I wouldn't. Because I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't seeking his understanding. I wasn't asking for closure. I had become the closure. And the silence between us, it wasn't tension. It was the sound of a chapter closing, finally, cleanly, and completely. He left without another word. I watched him walk away, slower than before, like even his footsteps didn't know where to go anymore. And I didn't follow, didn't text, didn't wonder. I finished my coffee, closed my laptop, and let the breeze hit my face. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying anything heavy. Not his weight, not his lies, not the pressure to be the woman he expected. I was just me, stripped down, built back up, and finally standing on something real. Later that night, I recorded a new episode. I talked about the illusion of happy endings, how sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is walk away. I didn't say his name. I didn't need to. The story wasn't about him anymore. It was about the woman who found her voice with a single word. No. The word that cracked everything open. The word that led me back to myself. We talk so much about saying I do, but no one tells you how sacred it is to say I don't, or, more importantly, I won't. I ended the recording with the line I'd been saving. The line that carried me from that altar to this moment. I didn't say I do, but I finally said yes to myself. Then I sat there, alone in my living room, bathed in the soft hum of quiet, and smiled. Not because I won, not because I hurt him, but because I had finally chosen me. And that was the real beginning. Not the wedding that never was, but the life that had only just begun.